So they say they're pretty well practiced and hopeful for a finish more around 3 o'clock than possibly as late as 6 o'clock. Across the West Country, and we're looking at a number of other counts further west from here, there are leaden skies. So seasonal deluge are being expected as those ballot boxes come in across more rural constituencies. We're looking at Devon North, where the ballot boxes will also start coming in. We're seeing them poised there, those teams, waiting for that to happen. And then further west in Cornwall, Camborne and Redruth as well, also waiting for their ballot boxes there. So an air of, I think, expectation here as people are sitting waiting for those ballot boxes. Polling stations in places as diverse as Portakabins and pubs, and all about to close minutes away as those boxes then will start arriving in counts like this.
Well, good evening from the very grand town hall in Leeds city centre. In 2015, the vote was actually counted in Leeds Arena, but we can't be there tonight because Elton John is playing a concert. But I can promise you that as long as I'm still standing, we will be bringing you the results of 8 constituencies from here. They are Leeds Central, which is currently held by Hilary Benn, Leeds East, Leeds North East, Leeds North West, Leeds West, Morley and Outwood, the constituency lost by Ed Balls in 2015, Pudsey, Elmet and Rothwell. We also have cameras around this region, the Yorkshire and Humber region, so we will be bringing you live results from Dewsbury, from Hull and from Sheffield as well. Now, on my way up on the train, I read in a number of newspapers that they will be expecting results around 5:30 to 6 o'clock.
Well, the result tonight, whatever it is, has got so many ramifications, both here and abroad. And joining us here at Westminster will be some of the key figures from and supporters of the parties. Sir Craig Oliver was David Cameron's Director of Communications for 5 years in Downing Street. He was at his leader's side at this point in 2015. Well, tonight he's waiting to see how David Cameron's successor has done. We're also joined by the film director Ken Loach, who is perhaps the most famous backer of and advocate for Jeremy Corbyn's leadership of the Labour Party. So we'll get the first reaction from them just as soon as that exit poll arrives in a few minutes' time.
Well, here in Sunderland, the excitement is building. You can hear the buzz behind me. That exit poll due out in less than 3 minutes' time now. And just behind me, those doors at the back there, those red doors are open and are ready to receive the ballot boxes. All those sixth formers, 80 of them lined up, ready to bring those ballot boxes in, where the counters are primed and ready. They're so excited and they are determined to hold on to their crown as the place that declares first. They are the record holders, the reigning champions. They don't want to let it go. The last election, Sunderland South and Houghton announced at 10:48. Can they beat that record tonight? A lot of jokes going around here, actually, that people have ordered their dinner for 11:30 and midnight. That's how much confidence they've got in the Sunderland elections. They're not going to let their dinner go cold. So we're just awaiting those ballot boxes. There are 3 constituencies in Sunderland, all being counted under this one roof. I mentioned Houghton and Sunderland South, Sunderland Central as well, Washington and Sunderland West. All of them, last time out, declaring before 11:30. Pretty impressive, right? For 25 years, the last 6 general elections, they have been at the top of their game. This year, though, they've got competition. Their rivals, Newcastle, they are saying they will be declaring before 11 o'clock. Will they? The competition is on. Stay with us here on Sky News. Live coverage throughout tonight and well into the morning. We're just approaching a minute now until the exit poll is released. We'll have more after this break.
The moment is nearly here in hundreds of constituencies across the United Kingdom, from Cornwall to Caithness, Brighton to Belfast. The polls are about to close. And when the polls do close, we will bring you the exclusive exit poll carried out for Sky News, the BBC and ITV News by Ipsos Mori and GfK. Who will control Parliament and the country for the next 5 years? It is 10 o'clock. Votes 2017 is over, and here are the numbers. We are saying the Conservatives are on 314. That is down from the 331 David Cameron had at the last election in 2015. Labour is up 266 from 232. The Liberal Democrats, a good night for them. They are up from 8 to 14. The SNP are down 34 seats for them compared to 56 in 2015. Now, if the exit poll is correct, what we're saying is that the Conservatives are the largest party, but remember, it's 326 for an overall majority. So that means the Conservatives could be in hung Parliament territory. The Conservatives have 17 fewer seats than 2015. And if that's right, they'll be 12 short of majority. Our exit polls surveyed 30,450 people across 144 locations. The other forecasts are that other parties will win 22 seats. That, of course, includes 18 in Northern Ireland, 1 for the Greens and 3 for Plaid Cymru. So, Conservatives' largest party.
Well, after that extraordinary exit poll, we are joined now by the former Downing Street Director of Communications, Sir Craig Oliver, and the film director and Jeremy Corbyn supporter, Ken Loach, and our political editor, Faisal Islam, as well. Faisal, let's go to you first. Quick reaction to that exit poll. It looks like the gamble hasn't paid off for Theresa May.
A staggering exit poll that, if true, goes against all the expectations. Remember, at the beginning of this, not just the Conservatives, but Labour too, were expecting an increase in majority of about 100. If Theresa May has lost seats, if she's lost enough seats to lose her majority, that goes down as one of the most extraordinary shocks in electoral history. I have to say, let's go back over the exit poll history. What they aim to try to do is get it within 20 seats. So you can add 20 to that and you just about get the same result that we're at the moment. You can take 20 away and Jeremy Corbyn is heading to Downing Street. So it's right in the middle there. So we really will be a long night of results in different seats, different currents. And I have to say this, that although history suggested that there would be a default to the incumbent, that people would go back, I picked up over the past couple of weeks, and I said it in my last live last night, I did pick up strange situations where people you would not have expected in the past were saying they were going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. Ex-UKIP voters who were obsessed with Brexit, who were upset about immigration, but thought that Corbyn's approach to nationalisation was the right thing. Ex-Conservative voters who said they wanted to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. And there's something else too. We have focused totally on Leave voters, generally speaking. We've gone and vox-popped people in the north of England. There are an awful lot of Conservatives, perhaps there's one across the road here, who were committed Remainers, who weren't happy with Theresa May's approach to Brexit. And I've heard from an awful lot of those too, who were really uncomfortable about the idea of backing Theresa May's specific approach to Brexit as well. Who knows how it's all going to come out in the wash? I doubt that's going to be the specific result. But as I said, you add 20 to that, Theresa May still has a majority. You take 20 away from that, Jeremy Corbyn's potentially in Downing Street. If that's the point result, how about this? 314 to the Conservatives and 314 to the Progressive Alliance.
Extraordinary
Enjoy
stuff.
that.
Faisal, thank you. Well, Sir Craig Oliver, it feels like we should come to you next. This really does seem to be a shock result, if the exit poll is accurate, for the Conservative Party. It's a very bad night.
The team that's done this exit poll has got it right more often than it hasn't. It's been very accurate in recent elections, so we have to take it seriously. I think Faisal's absolutely right. That is right on the cusp. If you take into account 10 Ulster Unionists about that, it puts the Conservatives on about 324, which is still short of a majority. So every seat is going to count, and a touch one way or another will make a huge difference tonight. But if this is true, if this is accurate, in CCHQ there will be deep and lasting shock. This was the biggest gamble that a politician has taken for a long time. And if that exit poll is right, it has failed.
Ken Loach, let's bring you in. Faisal was saying that if the exit poll is underestimating the support for Jeremy Corbyn by just 20 points, he could be the one going into Downing Street.
He could. I mean, I'm a football fan, you know, so you never count your chickens till the final whistle. But if this is true, it is an extraordinary result for Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party, starting so far back and written off. And I think people have recognised an authentic man of principle as opposed to somebody who's acted like a robot. And I think that has come through. And despite the press, if it's true, despite the press, despite the bias within the media, he's actually managed to connect. And that's not only a triumph for him, it's a triumph against the media presentation of him, which has been extraordinary.
The other thing I'd just make a point of is a lot of Conservative dissatisfaction under the surface with this campaign. A lot of people have been saying that they didn't like the fact that it exclusively focused on Theresa May for so long. They didn't like the manifesto at all. And that's been really kept below the surface. I suspect tonight it will start bubbling up big time.
Yeah, well, they'll certainly start looking at that campaign. Thank you both very much for your thoughts, and thanks, Faisal, as well.
Well, Sophie, an absolutely sensational result. And if it's anything like accurate, I think there has to be a question, even if the Conservatives go into government, will Theresa May be the Prime Minister? Sky's election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher, was part of the team inside the exit poll deliberations, working on them, and he joins me now from Westminster. Michael, you and I in previous years have argued a little bit about the exit poll, and you've always turned out to be right. But this one is the most sensational one I can recall.
Well, during the day, Adam, we've been checking the data and rechecking the data and trying to scratch our heads about what is happening here. And throughout the day, what has happened is that the Labour have actually done better as we've gone through the day. We also believe, although we can't confirm, but we also believe that turnout is high, and of course that points towards people becoming mobilised and engaging with the electoral process. So that's good for Labour. Labour's vote is up everywhere in the English regions, but so too is the Conservatives. But it's just that Labour's vote is higher, risen higher than has the Conservatives. Labour's doing particularly well in London, because when we come to examine why the Labour vote is rising, we see that areas with high numbers of graduates, people with degrees, have swung quite heavily behind Labour. So Labour across the English regions is up, especially in London. Indeed, Conservatives down in London. But therefore no Conservative surge in the Midlands, in the North East, North West. Another critical part of the story, though, Adam, is Scotland, where the SNP estimate is really on the margins. We are highly uncertain about this estimate for the SNP. But if it's correct, then, of course, this will help the Conservatives, will also help Labour and possibly also the Liberal Democrats. But it could be that Mrs May is kept in power by the Scottish Conservatives squeezing the SNP vote there.
Michael, well, more from you later. That is absolutely sensational. You're seeing the exit poll at the bottom of your screen suggesting a hung parliament and loss of Conservative seats. Let's get more now from Ed Conway. Ed.
Yeah, well, let's check how the exit poll suggests Labour are faring and how it compares as well with their performances in the past. Because remember, at the last election, they won 232 seats. That, of course, with Ed Miliband at the helm. It's going to be worth just looking and comparing that with what we saw tonight in this exit poll. And, of course, we'll also be looking at what happens to currency markets as well. Now, let's compare back. So, to Ed Miliband there, 232 votes. What about tonight's exit poll? Well, it's suggesting that Jeremy Corbyn here could win 266 seats. That's up 34 seats on last time, in stark contrast to what many of the polls were previously suggesting. Of course, it's lower than the numbers the party had while in government. Let's just show you, each of these bars show you the number of seats Labour won in each election. So if we go back through time, we can see Gordon Brown's losing election in 2010. Of course, that's actually fewer seats than Jeremy Corbyn getting potentially, according to the exit poll, this time. Here are Tony Blair's 3 elections. You can see them here. And if we scroll back through the 90s, we can see the peak of Labour's performance. So there you have it. 1997, 419 seats in that famous landslide. And note That was basically the peak. So go back past 1992 into the 80s and you can see Labour's seats falling and falling down to that post-war nadir of 1983. Michael Foot winning just 209 seats. But, of course, the exit poll is suggesting Jeremy Corbyn is on course for a much better night than that.
OK, Fanai, thanks so much indeed. So if that exit poll is correct, Theresa May's team will be reeling. They were expecting a comfortable majority of at least 60 plus. That is not what the exit polls are saying so far. She is at home this evening. She will have been watching those exit polls as we did here in Maidenhead. Robert Nisbet is there for us. Hi, Robert. My goodness me, what a shock.
An absolute surprise, I have to say, Kay. I've been following the Conservative campaign team for the last few weeks, and there had been confidence despite various wobbles along the way, including that error in the manifesto that many viewed it over social care and criticism that their manifesto hadn't been effectively costed. But there was a quiet confidence running underneath most of the senior members of the campaign that they believed they were on course for a victory, and that gamble that we've all been talking about had paid off. Now, I've heard within the last few minutes from a senior source in the Conservative campaign, very brief statement, Kay, but it's this: let's wait and see. It's a projection. There is a long night ahead, and we all remember 2010, just how long a night that was and how it stretched into days and weeks as the wrangling then began. But there will also be questions, I think, within the Conservative Party, and there are senior Conservatives who I've spoken to over the past few weeks who have also had disquiet, let's say, about various aspects of the campaign. They felt that it was too tightly controlled, that it was too much focusing on Theresa May, and that message control was so great that other senior Conservative members didn't get a chance to have their say on the campaign. They would have preferred less, I think, focus on Theresa May herself and more about the broad principles and policies that were on offer. So just to reiterate that, Kay, a senior Conservative campaign source telling me, let's wait and see. It's a projection. There's a long night ahead.
Certainly is, Robert. She has the fourth largest majority in the country after Knowsley, East Ham and Hampshire North East. 200 to 1 on to retain her seat. It's a cast iron certainty here. What's going to happen in the rest of the country? My goodness me, that exit poll is going to rock them at Tory Central Office. Sophie?
Thanks, Kay. Well, we're joined now by the Northern Ireland Secretary, James Brokenshire, to try and pore over that extraordinary exit poll.
Hello, Sophie.
If it's anything near right, it's been a total disaster for Theresa May.
Well, it's still very, very early in the evening, and we'll actually wait to see when those individual results come through. And we've been campaigning to win this election, to win that mandate, to get on with Brexit and actually deliver jobs, the economy, growth, all of those things that the Prime Minister has been campaigning on. But I think we've seen polls at this time of the night, and I think we just need to wait to see those results before drawing any conclusions. And it is those individual battles in individual constituencies that will be making the difference. And certainly from my my tours up and down the country,
so
talking
you think it's wrong then? Are you saying that you think
I think it's too early.
For
it's too early in the night to be drawing conclusions. But all I would say is that there has been, I think, some really solid Conservative support in some of our key marginals, seats that we believe that we can win. And so I think that we'll just wait to see what the first results start. So it's actually getting some hard data.
Well, we won't be long until that hard data starts coming in. But if it does turn out that Theresa May loses seats, then the whole gamble will have paid off. She's built this whole election campaign around her personality, her as a leader, and it looks as though voters have had a look at it and potentially haven't really liked what they saw.
Well, I don't sort of I don't think we can draw conclusions in that way at this point in the night. Clearly, we want to see a Conservative majority to give that mandate to the Prime Minister to get on with the job, and why she very firmly called this election. I think she was right to call that election, given that there were so many people seeking to block progress in relation to the Brexit negotiations.
Even if she loses seats, she was still right to call the election.
I think it was right, because ultimately she was presented with a situation in the House of Commons, also the House of Lords, of people actually wanting to frustrate the whole Brexit process. Why the manifesto was very clear, and those principles, the 12 principles that were set out therein. And so it is very firmly about that, how we do take our country forward, get the right negotiations, which start in 11 days' time. But equally, the Prime Minister was clear in saying that we've had huge surprises in elections over recent years, and therefore that there is always no certainty about elections. Why she went in with that frame of mind, knowing that she wanted that mandate, she wanted to get that result to be able to get on. But we'll wait to see what comes through with the results we see tonight.
One of the things that Theresa May said constantly throughout the campaign, I've got it here, is if she loses just 6 seats, she'll lose this election, and Jeremy Corbyn will be sitting down to negotiate with the presidents, prime ministers and chancellors of Europe. So if you lose 6 seats or more, which the exit poll says you will, Jeremy Corbyn will be prime minister.
Well, to be honest, it was that choice that we framed very clearly between Theresa May taking on negotiations with Brexit forward, or that coalition of chaos. And actually, it was to try and underline to people that things could change, to actually show that there was a choice here, that people were saying, oh, well, it was always going to be this. Well, elections are never like that. They're always about a choice, a decision that people have to make. And why the Prime Minister was underlining that people going out and voting, people making those decisions, obviously determine the elections, to make sure that people don't stay at home, actually do go out and vote. But we'll wait to see what the results actually start to tell us.
OK, very nervous few hours ahead.
It'll be a long night, as these elections always are, these election coverage always is.
James Brokenshire, thank you very much. Let's go to Ed Conway now.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. This is our big screen here, and as the results come in over the course of the evening and through to the morning, we will have them coming up here. But for a moment, let's just ponder on that extraordinary exit poll result. And we're going to get out a piece of kit that we prepared last time around, didn't really have much cause to use, which is called the Coalition Builder, where we try and work out how easily you could make a coalition from the results that we have coming in. Now, of course, all we have so far is the exit poll. That's not yet borne out by any of the results. We'll see. We'll mark to market as those results come out. But let's see how easily you could create a coalition out of these results. So, for instance, let's take the Tories first of all, the biggest party according to this exit poll, and put them into government. As you can see, even with all of those seats there, they would still be 12 short of that winning line, 326 seats. Now, that, of course, is the winning line. There are big question marks, though, about a few different variables. For instance, how many Sinn Féin MPs are there going to be in Northern Ireland? They don't sit in Parliament, and that determines precisely where that line is. How many, for instance, of the Unionist MPs in Northern Ireland could the Tories rely on to help them get up towards that line? But we know that, for instance, the Lib Dems, who last time around went into coalition with a Conservative government, well, theoretically, they could create a solid majority, well, pretty wafer-thin majority, but nonetheless a majority for the Conservatives, but they've said that they don't want to do that. They have promised that they're not going to go into coalition in their manifesto. So there are big question marks there. Should we try and do the same exercise as well for the Labour Party, just to see whether they could get anywhere close to that line? So let's take the Labour Party and put those seats, 266 of them, into government. You can see they are much further from that winning line, 60 extra seats needed. Perhaps add on the Lib Dems, add on the SNP with 34 seats, lower than last time around. And you see we're kind of approaching that line very quickly. Plaid Cymru, perhaps, the Green Party, that coalition, the progressive coalition that they've talked about previously, they're getting very close to that line, but they'd still be 8 short. Nonetheless, there's going to be a lot of this over the course of the night as we work out whether these numbers are indeed right and whether they can work. And, of course, there will also be all sorts of market reaction. We're going to be looking at that through the course of the evening. Do you remember last time around when Brexit happened, how the pound fell so sharply by about 10% in that night? Have a look at this. This is happening right now. This is the pound versus the US dollar. And you can see that as that exit poll came through, it was around 129, 130. It came down, it plunged down by about 1.5% against the dollar. Now, these prices are updated every second, and we are, over the course of this evening, going to be looking through and just seeing what the news from this exit poll and indeed from this election prefigures for the market. But just have a look at that. Yet again, there's been another shock to the system, and traders out there who were nervous about this exit poll but thought that there was going to be a majority, well, you can see what they're doing. They're selling the pound.
Here we go. Well, we're joined now by Labour's Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry, and Ed was just showing the reaction of the markets to the thought that there could be a hung parliament, to the thought that you potentially could be joining up or doing deals with other parties. They don't very much like the idea of the Conservative Party losing their majority, do they?
Look, it's still early. These are only exit polls. But they have been right for the last 20 years or so, 30 years. So I think we're on the verge of a great result. Just think, you know, only 7 weeks ago, the hubris of the Prime Minister, who was 20 points ahead, who wanted to have a blank cheque. She wanted to be able to do whatever she wanted with the country, with Brexit, with the economy, with our National Health Service. And we said no, and we meant it. And we put forward a popular manifesto with a leader of the party who has withstood the most extraordinary personal attacks and actually has shown that if anybody was strong and stable, it was him. And this is a great result, if it's true.
So what happens if it is true then? If Theresa May is short of her majority, you said that there would be no deals with any other party.
Well, I think,
do you stick by that?
I think that if this is right, and again, we haven't had a single result yet, but if this is right, I think she should consider her position.
But so you think Theresa May should...
First of all, I think she should go, because I think that she has manifestly failed. And secondly, I think that we will see what happens next. But if the Labour Party is called on to provide the next government, we will do so, and we will do it in a unified way under a popular manifesto where we have put forward policies before the country that they have liked, with a leader who is strong.
So what does that mean then? Does that mean you would consider going into deals?
Let's have a result first.
This does matter for people.
Of course it matters.
You're calling on the Prime Minister to resign if the exit poll is right.
If the exit poll is right, she should resign.
It's only right that we should ask you what you'd be planning to do if the exit poll is right.
Let's see. I mean, we will, you know, let's see. I don't think that I need to speculate at this stage. I mean, I'm not even an MP, so I would really like to be re-elected tonight. I would really like to see some real results, and we'll take it one step at a time.
OK, Emily Thornberry, thank you for your
thoughts. No problem.
Well, interesting that Emily Thornberry, Shadow Foreign Secretary, is doing a tour of the media studio. She's very confident that the constituency count here at Islington South, the teller's already busy underway emptying some of the ballot boxes there. She enjoys a healthy majority here, not as big as Jeremy Corbyn's 43%. He's Islington North, she's Islington South. Statement we've just received, I'll tell you about it in a second, from senior Labour sources, but I just want to paint a picture for you of what happened on the stroke of 10 inside this leisure centre when that exit poll came through. Eyes, certainly my eyes, many other eyes fixed on a gaggle of Labour activists sporting the red rosettes who were huddled in a corner. And I have to tell you, at the moment that exit poll came through, there were gasps from the media gallery here, but no reaction that I could discern anyway from those Labour activists. Maybe they're feeling a sense of caution, thinking back to 1992. John Major, Neil Kinnock, thinking back perhaps to 2015, the exit poll not being reflected by the actual vote. Let's bring in Jason Farrell, our senior political correspondent, who has been talking to senior Labour sources. They say, Jason, that Theresa May's credibility is, quote, shot to pieces.
Yeah, that's right. So sources close to Jeremy Corbyn saying that her credibility is shot, saying that she had said, she's the one who said that if she lost 6 seats, she wouldn't be Prime Minister. Adding to that, no party has ever advanced as much in popular support in a general election campaign as Labour has, if these exit polls are accurate. So strong words coming from the Labour camp tonight in anticipation that they could do very well this evening. Think back to Len McCluskey only a few weeks ago saying that 200 seats would be a good night for Labour. 266, well, that would be really quite
phenomenal. You think back to February and the Conservatives taking Copeland and getting that confidence that they might be able to take more seats in the northeast, the northwest, those Brexit supporting seats. That seems to have backfired. Could they lose Copeland tonight? And it does sort of reflect the things that we've been seeing around the country, this sort of turning point that seemed to come around about the time that the manifestos were released, when Labour seemed to have a boost from what was in theirs and the Conservative Party seemed to flounder from the social care policy that they had in their manifesto. And so, we'll wait to see. We should get a more full statement from Labour later, but they will be watching every single seat now just to try and see whether this exit poll is really taking them potentially towards a hung parliament, potentially towards even Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister.
Jason, thanks very much indeed. What a sensational turn. The big question, I suppose, for the activists here and the advisors, Jeremy Corbyn's advisors, is to what extent this is a tick for him, for his programme, for his manifesto, for that way he reached out to younger voters, sticking to his principles, you might say, and to what extent it's a cross for Theresa May. How much is a vote of no confidence from the general public in her leadership? How much of this is a vote of confidence in Jeremy Corbyn? Adam.
Thank you very much indeed, Colin. Well, those results, actual results we're going to get in the northeast in the next hour or so will give us an idea if this exit poll really is on track, because of course the Conservatives were hoping to pick up UKIP votes and seats in the northeast. But the exit poll, which shows a sensation, a hung parliament, isn't the only research we have available tonight, using information gathered from more than 10,000 Sky customers. Sky data is helping us understand why voters have voted the way they have. Let's talk to Sky's Lewis Goodall about that. I mean, before we come on to the Sky data, if this exit poll is right, and it's been, it's plus or minus 20 seats, but it's been in the right region for the past 3 elections, it's a sensation, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely sensational. Perhaps the biggest electoral gamble that any Prime Minister has taken in modern times, and the biggest rebuff and rejection from the electorate that you can imagine. And when you can consider this as an election that was all about her mandate, her personal mandate, asking the British people not just to give her a majority, but an enormous majority against for her negotiations for Europe, then it really, I think, would probably be very, very difficult for her to continue. And then she would become the shortest-serving Prime Minister we've had in this country since Andrew Bonar Law. Remember him, Adam? Not many people do. Most people remember him as the invisible Prime Minister, and there's a reason for that. He was only Prime Minister for about 10 months or so, and Theresa May would be looking to be the shortest serving Prime Minister since then. And that would really, truly be a sensational result. And I think more generally, if we're looking to sort of historical examples, this is starting to... There was a lot of discussion about whether this election would be most like 1987 or whether it would be like 1992. It's starting to look to me a little bit like 1974, where you have a Conservative Prime Minister go to the country on the prospectus of who governs, and the country says, not you, and guess what? We have to have another election later in the year, just as we did in 1974.
And of course, they had to have an election, as you say, very close together, and that remains one possibility.
February and October.
And another general election. As far as I can gather, from this poll, we also think there's quite a lot of movement, that the Conservatives doing better in some areas and less well in others.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we can clearly see from some of those numbers, so looking at the SNP, we're sort of losing sight of that given the sort of overall mammoth nature of the Labour Conservative figures, but the SNP way down. And that would imply, we think, that clearly the Conservatives will be doing better in Scotland and potentially taking some seats that we had expected to see a revival there. So, for example, Angus Robertson in Murray in the north of Scotland, he could be in trouble. And then if we look sort of further south, actually, Labour doing much better. Labour would actually have more seats under Jeremy Corbyn than Gordon Brown had in 2010. Never mind Ed Miliband, and they would be coming directly from the Conservatives in England. So we might imagine people like Anna Soubry in Broxtowe, she could be in trouble. We could imagine that someone like Theresa Villiers in Chipping Barnet in North London, she could be in trouble. And people, and Myrie Black in Paisley and Redfordshire South, she could be in trouble as well. So we could see all sorts of different permutations that, frankly, we didn't imagine and didn't even think possible at the start of this election campaign, where, of course, we thought the Tories would be far in the advance. It might be worth considering Gordon Brown might be one man who thinks he's a bit vindicated tonight, because, of course, famously, he didn't go for that election in 2007. Maybe this was why. Maybe this is exactly what he feared.
Because, of course, if this is right, Mrs May has thrown away 3 years of Conservative majority government.
Absolutely.
Now, Sky data, This is subjective analysis, really, the mood of the nation. What's that telling us?
Well, as we can see over here, I mean, we have why would you vote Conservative? I say this is just our data, nothing to do with the exit poll, saying that people are saying they would make a good government. 69% of our respondents saying that they would. 28% of people saying they are the least bad option. So on the basis of that, we might think that they should have had a much better night than perhaps we would have expected.
That's only Tory voters, though.
But that is, of course, only Conservative voters, yes. So actually, 30% of those people actually would say that they would make a bad government, even Conservative voters. So maybe that gives you some indication of why they're struggling tonight.
Any more information?
No, well, we've got here, why did you vote Labour? Again, Labour respondents, they would make a good government, 46%. They're the least bad opposition, 38%.
So that's interesting. The Labour voters less convinced, really, but still thinking it's worth a go.
Yes, absolutely. And what we've seen, I think, during the course of this campaign, and I saw it myself a little bit out on the road over the last 6 weeks, is you really saw the Labour vote solidify. I mean, at the very start of this campaign, you really went to places, in traditional Labour places, and you heard people say, I really don't like Jeremy Corbyn, very antithetical to him. And over the course of the 6 weeks, as the campaign wore on, Labour voters going back to Jeremy Corbyn and really turning against Theresa May. And if this ex-poll is right, that seems to have been what's taken place.
Of course, so one in the eye for the mainstream media, particularly the newspapers.
Well, again, I mean, and some of the pollsters as well. Not a great night for pollsters once again.
Thank you. Jane.
Well, social media, I think it's fair to say Twitter just about went into meltdown after that exit poll was released. Lots and lots of people now reacting. I think Theresa May has one own goal of the season. That's from Gary Lineker. That's one of our favourites in the last couple of hours. Someone else suggesting that this is all just a conspiracy by us lot to make you lot at home stay up all night because nobody can go to bed now. Sandra Hearn, reflecting on Theresa May's comment that the naughtiest thing she'd ever done was run through a field of wheat. Where is the nearest field of wheat for her now, he says. Lots of people also now discussing what comes next. A lot of people, Boris o'clock. Boris Johnson is featuring in a lot of people's tweets in the last half hour since this result came in. Also, though, a note of caution. This is from Guido Fawkes. He said, reminder that at this time, on June the 23rd, of course, after the referendum, Nigel Farage conceded that Remain had won. So a note of caution from him, but others are saying, what's going on in Labour HQ at the moment. Amy Lou Lewis suggests that this could be what Corbyn and McDonnell are doing right now inside the Labour camp. Let's just take a look at some of the election data from the last couple of hours. And this is interesting as well. Between 8 and 9 this evening, these were the most discussed candidates on Twitter. Jeremy Corbyn, 51%, Theresa May, 40%, Tim Farron, just 3%. I mean, I suppose in some senses, not a surprise that Jeremy Corbyn is getting a lot of traction on Twitter. We know that his appeal, he has a very strong appeal amongst a lot of young voters, and they are much more active on social media. But it is a case that Twitter is simply going into meltdown. Emma Freud summed it up. What's the emoji for what is happening here?
Well, we've heard some of the reaction from the parties to tonight's exit poll prediction, but what about the public? We've sent our reporters out on the road tonight. Becky Johnson is at a logistics hub in Manchester, and Ashish Joshi is on the Isle of Wight at the festival there. So let's go to Becky first, shall we? And what's the reaction been where you are?
Yeah, actually, stunned silence. Drivers here on night shifts, a lot of them Tory voters. They were predicting big Tory majorities. They watched the exit poll come in on this big screen on the side of the Lewis lorry that we've got here. Let me bring in Mike. Mike, you're a Conservative voter. You thought it would be a big majority. It's not. What's gone wrong for Mrs May?
I think probably two things unfairly. I think not attending the debates on TV, that didn't really show the strong leader. So that's probably gone against her. And maybe unfairly, the cuts she made to the police when she was Home Secretary in light of the recent incidents, that might have also gone against her.
All right, so we'll have to see. I mean, Colin, you're a Labour supporter, a lifelong Labour supporter, and you were actually saying to me you thought Corbyn's been doing better in the last couple of weeks, so you're not so surprised?
No, definitely not, no. Not the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's come on leaps and bounds.
You weren't convinced by him, were you?
No.
What's he done to convince you?
I don't know, just confidence. He's gaining confidence, I think, himself. I think he's believed in himself more.
Okay. Yeah. Other Tory voters here, what do you think's gone wrong for Mrs May? She was, you were thinking it would be quite a big majority for her.
I thought it would be a landslide. I think maybe there's too much arrogance in the first place in terms of calling the election to get a bigger majority, so it's backfired. I think, as Mike said, I think you know, some of not doing a live debate's not a good one because it's a bit like reality TV these days, isn't it? People vote in terms of what they see in the soundbites. So.
All right, thanks ever so much for talking to us. So we're going to get reaction here throughout the night.
So we're at the Isle of Wight Festival. Thousands of young people descending on the Isle of Wight to enjoy the festival here when the Lewis lorry put this graphic up on screen. Gasps, shock. And I've got some young Labour voters who received the news extremely happy with what's going on. Taylor, Sienna? Serena, thank you. Give us your immediate reaction to what you've just seen on the screen.
I'm really happy about the reaction. Yeah, really happy.
Why? Why did you... it was just not predicted. Yeah. This isn't the final result. This is the first exit poll, but it looks like Jeremy Corbyn and Labour have done really well. Yeah. Did you expect him to do so well?
I didn't expect it at first, but I think a lot more students, especially in my area, voted a lot more. I saw loads of posts on Facebook about like just registering, people encouraging a lot of people to register, even if, you know, even if they weren't going to vote for Jeremy. Like loads of people were just registering because a lot of my generation haven't really like registered, but this time they really pushed it.
Jeremy Corbyn seems connection with young people. Why do you think he's done that?
I think we just need a bit of a change now, and he's really tried to interact with people like Jamie and the Grimes. He's trying to talk to people more on his level than like someone just projecting and saying what they want to do, than like actually talking to normal human beings, if that makes sense.
Normal human beings, for the many, not just for the few. That's what he said all along. So that's an immediate reaction from two people here, lots of other people, quite a broad spectrum of political opinions here, but certainly this has been well received by the majority of them.
Thanks, Ashish. Thank you, Becky. You're watching Vote 2017, the results, live on Sky News. The polls have only been closed for around half an hour, but we've already got an extraordinary story. The broadcaster's exit poll suggests the Conservatives will be the biggest party, but will lose their overall majority. It also suggests Theresa May has lost seats, meaning her gamble to call a snap election would have failed. And Jeremy Corbyn is forecast to win 266 seats. That's 34 seats more than Labour last time around. Well, we're joined to discuss that exit poll with our panel, with Ken Loach, the film director, with Rachel Johnson, the journalist, and also with Sir Craig Oliver, the former David Cameron advisor. Ken Loach, let's go to you first. I mean, if this exit poll's right, it suggests that campaigns do matter, and Jeremy Corbyn has managed to convince people during those 6 weeks.
Yes, I mean, it's a campaign in the teeth of a hostile gale, remember, from all the media. So I think it is extraordinary.
Although there was media criticism of the Conservative campaign as well.
There was, but nothing like the personal abuse that Jeremy Corbyn got. But I think people are really concerned about things like the health service. They're concerned that they don't have secure work. They're concerned that they get work through agencies where they can be turned on and off like a tap. So I think there were real issues that people were worried about and angry about, and that wasn't reflected in the coverage, but it was certainly reflected when you talk to people. They weren't talking about Brexit, they were talking about things very close to home, and that's what Jeremy Corbyn was talking about.
Sir Craig Oliver, when I spoke to Emily Thornberry, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, a bit earlier, she said that if this result is right, Theresa May should resign. Do you think she would have to go?
Well, politics is all about expectation management, and I think what the Conservative Party allowed to do in this campaign was settle around the idea that 50 was par for her, and anything less than that, 50 majority, anything less than that would be a problem. The Conservative Party are going to have to go some to actually get towards 50, so she would be in serious trouble, I think. The other issue is, I think I've been talking to people at CCHQ, a couple of people there, and apparently it's very silent there, a lot of people looking at their phones, watching the TVs in silence, and in genuine shock by this. Now, it's possible the exit poll is wrong, but historically it's actually been very accurate. So real concern, I think, in the Conservative Party tonight.
And of course it would have to be very wrong for her to get to that 50-seat threshold that you're talking about.
Significantly wrong to do that.
Rachel Johnson, it feels like we should touch upon the Liberal Democrats as well, because expectations have been quite low for how they've been performing, but it looks, according to this, that they would actually be picking up some seats.
Well, as Craig keeps saying, if. I mean, it looks, if there's 14 seats, that's many more than the Lib Dems hoped. I mean, it's a 50% increase. They've got 9 seats at the moment. I should say we, as I did join the Lib Dems.
Sorry, people
We're
are
getting some
shouting
people
at me.
shouting
I'm
your
sorry,
name.
I didn't understand. I thought somebody
You're
in the
obviously a
gallery was...
celebrity.
So no, it's not good. You know, it doesn't mean that, unlike some, you know, potential leaders of our big political parties, that the leader is toast tomorrow morning. I think it means that Tim Farron, who people said didn't have a brilliant campaign because he didn't cut through on his lead topic, which was Brexit, people were absolutely fed up with the idea of having a second referendum, getting angry all over again 10 months later about the same subject. That didn't work. Shouldn't have nosed off on that. And as Ken says, actually people were much more interested in housing and the health service and education than they were in fighting a battle that was lost in terms of the Lib Dems in June last year.
Do you think, Ken Loach, that if there is a hung parliament, if we are in hung parliament territory, then actually Jeremy Corbyn should be looking to do deals with other parties, like the SNP, for example?
Well, I would think they would do it on an issue-by-issue basis. I can't see them having... They've said so clearly that they won't do a coalition. I can't see them doing that. But I would think he'd say, look, there's the manifesto, support it if on an issue-by-issue basis. And I would think he'd feel that the wind is in his sails now. So that their popularity is growing, and that therefore he'll, you know, it will continue to grow.
I think one important point to make is just how volatile British politics is at the moment and what that actually means for the future of the country and the running of the country. If this is accurate, the difficulty of running a country at these incredibly difficult times with Brexit negotiations, I think Ken's absolutely right, concern about public services is very real. It's going to be an incredibly volatile period if this is true.
And we've seen the pound fall.
I think this actually explains why we've had one of these votes. The Germans have a noun called Trump und Brexit, which is this unexpected shock result when the whole country seemed to press the what the hell button and let's just go for something out of the mainstream. And this has happened here, but we've got to remember that we're in a state of perm-election. And with this, if this exit poll is right, this perm-election could carry on because we could see a leadership election, we could see another general election, the third in 3 years.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And if it is right, your reality is that you will see people plotting, maybe somebody not a million miles away from you in the next 24 hours, if this is true. And you're right, and this is incredibly close in Parliament, and that could mean another general election. But we have to keep underlining if this is right.
But that contributes to the anger and the fatigue that we're feeling in the electorate.
Well, voter fatigue, I think, is certainly something we all feel.
If these figures are right, that in a sense, that's not a huge shock, because the simmering discontent on all the social issues that we've talked about, it's only nudged a little, a few percentage points.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't think it's a huge
we'll come
shock.
Back to you,
in a way, it's what we should expect.
Well, we'll come back to you later in the evening. Thank you very much for all your thoughts on that exit poll. Appreciate it.
Well, welcome back here to Sunderland. The counts are underway. I make it around 10:42. Last general election, Sunderland South and Houghton declared at 10:48. So a result could be imminent. They're trying to make it 7 times lucky and be the first to declare. If you look over my shoulder, the counters are still very busy. We're being told that there was a 61% turnout for Houghton and Sunderland South. The counter's still busy going through those ballot papers, but we are expecting that result in around 6 minutes' time if they are to equal 2015's record, if not sometime after that. But as soon as that exit poll was announced, there was a huge buzz around this hall. If an exit poll has ever convinced you that you need to stay up tonight and watch Sky News through the night, it is that poll to find out what happens. As I said, we are awaiting that result here. You can see a lot of police in the background as well. We've got armed police here at the count tonight as well. Like I said, possibly a few minutes to go. The candidates have started to pour into the hall, ready for the results. It should be a matter of minutes for Houghton and Sunderland South. We'll come back to you as soon as we've got that result. Keep a close eye on that, certainly, but let's return to that shock exit poll. Once again, could the Liberal Democrats be kingmakers? Are we getting the sensation of 2010 once again? Let's get the very latest reaction then from Siobhan Robbins, who's been
following the Liberal Democrats throughout this campaign and is with Tim Farron's team. What are they saying, Siobhan?
Yeah, I'm outside Tim Farron's house. I'm just keeping an eye out because I'm expecting him to come back actually in the next 10-15 minutes. But I've been speaking to senior sources within the Liberal Democrat camp, and this is what they say: no pacts, no deals, no coalition. They're really sticking to that message. They've been saying it throughout. They will not go into coalition, and it's pretty unsurprising, really, given that they were totally burnt by going into coalition in 2010. We saw them lose so many seats in 2015, much of that because of the coalition. So they're saying they're sticking to that. They also said they won't react to the exit poll. They're waiting for the proper results to come in. However, they did say this is a building project. They were looking to just hold seats. So I'd infer from that, if the exit poll is correct and they gain 6 seats, then that would be a really good night for the Liberal Democrats. But as I said, we're waiting for Tim Farron to come back. We'll try and bring you his reaction when he does.
Siobhan, thank you. So no deal, no coalition. Ming Campbell, who obviously is standing in Twickenham, has had much the same to say. Tim Farron, he said, made it very clear. He said no pact, no deal, no coalition. We've had our fingers burnt by coalition. I don't need to tell you that. I find it very, very difficult to see how Tim Farron would be able to go back on what he previously said. Well, let's bring in then, shall we, the president of the Liberal Democrats, Baroness Brinton. You're not tempted by government once again?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, one of the reasons that Tim Farron made it clear we wouldn't go into coalition is because we couldn't work with either Labour or the Conservatives, who are both pushing for a hard Brexit. We've been the only party, national party, who's been very, very clear that we didn't want to leave the single market, and both of the other parties want that. So Tim's absolutely right. Coalition is not on the cards, not just because of the 2015 result, but because of big policy differences.
What if they said to you, as part of the deal, OK, we will give you another referendum on the Brexit Pact? Would that at least make you think about it?
Tim has been very clear. No coalition deal on this for either Labour or the Conservatives, simply because the gap between us is too wide. It is that straightforward, that simple. No coalition deal.
So what is more important to you, getting the UK to stay in some means in the European Union, which is what you fought this campaign on, or once again protecting your party?
We're very clear that our role is to challenge the government, whichever colour that government might be, in the Commons and in the House of Lords as any deals come forward. And we still say that there are a number of people who would like some sort of say on the final deal, but we're a long way away from that at the moment.
But you could offer them that if you decided to go into coalition with either of these parties, if that's what your red line was.
No. We are very, very clear that we do not want to go into coalition with either of the two parties, simply because their stance is so unrelenting, such a hard Brexit, it makes it unworkable.
Can I put it to you that there is a difference, isn't there, between the type of liberalism that we see from Tim Farron and Nick Clegg? Nick Clegg, classical liberal, supporting economic liberalism. He'd prefer to see taxes cut for the poorest to increase opportunity. Contrast Tim Farron, who is in favour of higher public spending on public services and the disadvantage to reduce income inequality, more left-wing of the Liberal Democrat Party. Would he sit more comfortably, do you think, in a progressive coalition? Should he change his mind on this?
No, I don't think Tim does, but I think what we want to see is the results coming through. The exit poll's interesting, but it's a national one. I think you're going to see that where we've done particularly well and gained seats will be in the areas where our line on the dementia tax, our line on the 1 penny for the NHS and social care has really cut through. When this election started, everyone said it was only going to be about Brexit. Well, Theresa May's made a real mess of that. We know that actually the public are extremely concerned both about the NHS and about the Conservative position on the dementia tax. We think that's where we're going to see our steady growth later tonight.
So why was it okay for you to go into coalition with David Cameron back in 2010, and it's not now? What's changed?
Oh, it's very clear. People forget. In 2010, we were at a time of national crisis. People forget how bad it was when Labour left government. We had to do something in the national interest. It's unfortunate that over the 5-year period people forgot that, and they still do today. We were also very clear that by the time we got to the end of coalition, the time for austerity had come to an end, and we needed to start to build infrastructure growth again and stop the severe cuts. This election, the Conservatives have made it very clear they want to go on with severe austerity. And what we're seeing in the poll tonight is the public don't like that. Yes, it looks Labour's figures look encouraging for Labour, but also they are for us. We've come back from an appalling position in 2015. If the polls are right, we will nearly double our seats. That's good progress for us. This was always going to be a long trek back.
Baroness Brinton, President there of the Liberal Democrats, thank you. And it was Stephen Lloyd, who was re-standing for the seat of Eastbourne that he lost in 2015, that said, going into coalition with the Conservatives back in 2010, saved the country but killed ourselves. And perhaps that is still on the mind on the Liberal Democrats and their supporters.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, on your screens now you can see these two counts that are going on in Newcastle and in Sunderland, and we are expecting them to declare within minutes. It looks as if they're not going to hit their record time, because it was round about now that Sunderland declared when it set the record, but we expect we will get those results very shortly, and they will begin to tell us whether the exit poll and the real results are marching together. Let's get more now from Lewis Goodall. First of all, Lewis, we were hearing from Michael Thrasher, and anecdotally, there are a lot of reports on social media about young people getting out and voting, and also he said very high turnout, which there is normally anyway, amongst people with degrees.
Yes, absolutely. It looks like it's the graduates what sort of won it, or at least what certainly lost it for Theresa May, if this exit poll is right. It seems that people with degrees, pretty much between the ages of 18 and 30, swinging quite heavily towards the Labour Party, either perhaps enticed by that Jeremy Corbyn pledge on abolishing tuition fees, but also perhaps on an anti-austerity pledge. I mean, I said before that this is an election that could be a lot like 1974. In one way, it could also be a lot like 1970, if this exit poll is right, talking to Professor Michael Thrasher as well, which is that it looks like there has just been an enormous increase in terms of the Labour Party and Conservative Party vote share, a real return to two-party politics, as we've really noticed towards the end of this campaign. But nonetheless, despite that, and despite the fact of big increases for both parties, Theresa May managing to falter.
Now, it should be said that people are saying if this exit poll is right, but the record of exit polls over the last 3 elections is they're only out by about 15 to 20 seats. So that points to a very bad result for the Conservatives, given their position when they went into this election. It looks unlikely that they're going to get more seats than they had before. What about, though, the sort of people who might be in danger of losing their seats if we see this picture of Labour gaining, the Lib Dems gaining, and the Conservatives dropping, particularly since it looks as if they're hoping to gain in Scotland?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we spent so much of this campaign, didn't we, targeting and focusing and thinking about the sort of Labour figures who might lose their seats in the North and the Midlands, and yet we're having to rewrite that playbook, absolutely. Instead, we're starting to talk about Conservatives, often on the more sort of centre of the party, people like Anna Soubry losing her seat. In Broxtowe, that classic Nottinghamshire bellwether marginal, which has often swung between Labour and Conservatives depending on who was winning. And it's just worth saying, Adam, that we actually are seeing some potentially quite big increases in turnout. So we think that, for example, Newcastle Central, big university town, looks like turnout there could be 67%. It was 57% last time. So if that comes to pass, we can see why Theresa May might be really struggling here.
Well, we'll come back to you in just a moment, but we've got to go now to Scotland, and we're joined for the SNP by Tom Shepherd of the SNP. Are you braced for losses across Scotland, as the exit poll is suggesting, Mr. Shepherd?
Well, I think we do have to wait and see what the real poll is. This is only an estimate at this stage, and I remember 2 years ago getting very excited about exactly the same time when the exit poll then predicted pretty much the same thing, a hung parliament, and of course it didn't turn out that way. So I think we want to wait and see. But if this was in any sense correct, this exit poll, then this represents a huge defeat for the Conservatives, not just in England, where they appear to have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, but also in Scotland, where clearly they sought a mandate to win the election, to oppose a second independence referendum, and it looks as if they're not going to get that. It looks as if the SNP will get what anyone would have called a landslide had it not been for the result 2 years ago.
But the exit poll 2 years ago also predicted that the SNP were going to win well over 50 seats. This time down, the exit poll is suggesting you're dropping from 56 to 34, down 22 seats. And that does suggest, doesn't it, that the Unionists, particularly the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, have made inroads in your strength in Scotland.
No, I think what it suggests is that the result 2 years ago was something of a freak result. I mean, getting 95% of the seats in Scotland is something that was beyond anyone's imagination before it actually happened. So it's really no surprise. I think even on the best of days, we would have been losing.